The wind howled across the empty fields, rattling the wooden shutters of an old farmhouse that stood alone at the edge of a forgotten road. Inside, an aging farmer named Jacob sat silently at his kitchen table, staring at the single lamp that flickered with a weak glow. His life had been quiet for years, too quiet since his wife passed away and his grown children moved to distant cities. Loneliness had become his constant companion, whispering in the corners of his house, echoing in every meal eaten alone, every word spoken into silence. Jacob had gotten used to the stillness of his nights, until that evening when a sudden, urgent knock thundered against his door. He froze, his hands tightening on the edge of the table. Midnight visitors were rare, dangerous even, in his remote part of the countryside. His heart pounded as the knocking grew desperate, like someone begging for life itself. With trembling fingers, Jacob reached for the rusty lantern, lit it, and walked slowly to the door. When he opened it, what he saw left him speechless. Standing in the freezing rain was a young woman, soaked to the bone, cradling a small child in her arms. The child's face was pale, lips trembling, eyes barely open. "Please, help us," she whispered, her voice breaking under the weight of exhaustion and fear. Jacob's first instinct was suspicion's strangers at midnight could mean trouble. But one look at the child's fragile body pierced straight through his doubts. He stepped aside and said, "Come in." Inside the farmhouse, the woman collapsed onto the old wooden chair while Jacob wrapped the child in a quilt that once belonged to his late wife. He could feel the little one shivering violently, fever burning against his palm. Without hesitation, he stoked the dying fire, boiled water, and prepared what little soup he had left. The woman's tears mixed with the steam rising from the bowl as she whispered her thanks. As the hours passed, Jacob learned fragments of their story. The woman's name was Emily, and the child was her son, Noah. They had been living out of a broken-down car after escaping an abusive home. That night, the car finally gave out near Jacob's farm, and with no other light in sight, she followed the faint glow of his lantern through the storm. For the first time in years, Jacob felt something awaken inside him, a sense of purpose he thought he had buried with his wife. He stayed by Noah's side through the night, cooling his fever with wet cloths, whispering gentle words that only a grandfather could. The farmhouse, once filled with nothing but silence, now pulsed with life and fragile hope. The following days brought unexpected transformation. Jacob fixed Emily's car with his old tools, taught her how to tend the soil, and shared stories of the land. Emily, in turn, cooked meals that brought warmth back to his kitchen, while Noah's laughter echoed in the halls like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Neighbors who hadn't visited in years began stopping by, drawn by the sound of joy returning to Jacob's farm. But the most shocking part was not just that Jacob opened his door, it was that in choosing compassion over fear, he unknowingly changed 3 lives, including his own. Emily eventually found steady work in town, but she and Noah never left the farm completely. To them, Jacob was no longer a stranger but family, the grandfather Noah never had, the father figure Emily had prayed for. Years later, when Jacob's time came to rest, it was not in loneliness but surrounded by Emily, Noah, and the community that had once forgotten him. His simple act of kindness on that cold midnight had blossomed into a legacy of love that spread far beyond the walls of his farmhouse. And so the story reminds us, sometimes the doors we're most afraid to open are the very ones that lead to our greatest miracles.